God willing, this will function as my final condemnation of Melanie Martinez defenders, and by extension, kind of also Melanie Martinez. Be warned, some of this is scripted, some of it isn't. I have a document. The reason I'm making this video is because I have been battling Melanie Martinez apologists on TikTok for months, and they keep saying the same like 5 things over and over again, and all of it is just absolutely bogus, and hopefully I will show you in this video how none of the allegations were ever debunked. They say that they were, but that's just not true. It's founded on victim blaming rhetoric and also misinformation, because Melanie Martinez fans love to just make shit up and then spread lies. That's like their MO, so that's what they do. I'm gonna go through the actual evidence. We're gonna talk about it. Let's go. I'm gonna kick off this video by reading Timothy Heller's statement to you verbatim, so that we can just have all of her words and talk about them. I'm reading this off of my laptop, so that's what I'm looking at. Okay, here we go. I have kept this secret for years, convincing myself that it wasn't a big deal and I wasn't hurt by it. The thought of accepting that my best friend raped me seems insane. Even typing that doesn't feel real to me. I started telling the story to those closest to me as somewhat of a joke. Haha, can you believe this crazy night? But I began to get responses I wasn't expecting. Concerned ones. It's hard to say someone who you loved raped you. Someone you still love. The thought of writing that and having the world see it terrifies me, especially because of who this person is. This was my best friend. She took me in, which I was so grateful for. I felt like I owed her my life, and my life began to revolve around hers. I had my own problems, but if I could focus on her life, I could put off dealing with my own inner turmoil for just a bit longer. Some of her fans became my fans, but their loyalty never strayed from her. They are dedicated. She's perfect. To the public, she can do no wrong. She's there for her fans. She gets it. She's different. When faced with a friend who really needs help, though, I can honestly say that she let me down completely. During the most difficult time in my life, my rock bottom, her power and control over me grew and grew, and I was silenced. While being open and about realizing how much help I needed, I was made to feel guilty. I had to apologize for having an extreme panic attack where I thought I was going to die because it ruined her night. Endless incidents like this. I had become a problem. Yet, through it all, I loved her. Codependency works in a lot of strange ways. In my relationship with this friend, I was dependent on helping her with her life. As soon as I needed a small bit of focus and support from my best friend, there was nothing for us to relate to each other about. Our friendship was about her. The power she had over me grew into me having a very hard time saying no to her. I would do almost anything for her. One night, during a sleepover, she became increasingly interested in my sexual preferences. As someone who had previously been through sexual abuse, sex is hard for me to talk about. I was obviously uncomfortable, but she was my best friend, so I tried to be open about it. The conversation never seemed to end, though. I had to work very early in the morning. She began asking me while in bed if I would have sex with her. While being incredibly uncomfortable by this offer, I attempted to laugh it off. I had a boyfriend at the time, and she knew that. He doesn't have to know. It's not a big deal. It went on for hours, asking me why I didn't want to, that it would be fun. I repeatedly said no. I had work in the morning. I just wanted to sleep. I was exhausted. I attempted to sleep, but was kept up the entire night by my friend begging me to sleep with her. It seemed strange, but she was my best friend. I said no, and I thought we could move on. The next night, unfortunately, was the exact same way. Regardless of my response the first night, she was not giving up. If she had gotten the hint, she didn't care. I was exhausted. She convinced me to smoke weed, and since I have a hard time saying no to her, I complied, thinking maybe then I'd be able to just fall asleep and avoid the situation altogether. The same conversation began to happen, continuously trying to convince me it was going to be okay and that it would be fun and feel good. I would say my boyfriend would be so upset. I really need to sleep. I have work in the morning. I said every form of no I could think of, and I lay praying to fall asleep. And as I lay praying to fall asleep, she began touching my arm. I allowed this to happen. Maybe she'd give up. This went on for about an hour. I got increasingly uncomfortable. I started giggling, saying that it tickled. I in no way wanted to make this a sexual situation. Can I just do this? Can I just touch your arm? Can I just touch your boobs? She began bartering with me. All I wanted to do was to go to sleep. She began talking about the appearance of my boobs and begged to just touch them. We didn't have to do anything else. I was so exhausted and confused and high and belittled, I just allowed it to happen. This led to her touching the rest of me. I never said yes. I said no, repeatedly. But she used her power over me and broke me down, just so there is no confusion. I was molested by my best friend. I lay still in complete shock, completely not reciprocating. I hate speaking so bluntly on this because it makes me extremely uncomfortable, but she performed oral sex on me, and then I was penetrated with a sex toy without being asked. That's what happened. My bottom line that I need to always remind myself is that I said no for 2 nights straight. It doesn't matter that I didn't resist during the action. I had been broken down. She knew I didn't want to. I made that clear. I didn't scream at her. I didn't force her off me. 1, because I loved her, and 2, because I just wanted it all to be over. We never talked about this night ever again. While it completely messed with my head, there was no way Maya could have been raped by my best friend, right? Our friendship ended because she decided she didn't have time for me anymore, to worry about me anymore. She cared too much about me. It was holding her back. I'm not sure how to end this story. I'm terrified of the response I'm going to get. The only reason I do this now is because I'm hoping because of recent events people will believe me. If you begin to doubt the abuse taking place in this story, I beg you to imagine her role in this being a man. Girls can rape girls. Best friends can rape best friends. Friendship does not equal consent. Silence doesn't equal consent. I wish it wasn't so hard for me to convince myself of these things. What did Melanie have to say to that, you might ask? Believe it or not, I've encountered Melanie Martinez defenders on TikTok who come into my comments trying to say she's innocent, and then when I show her her initial response statement, they've never fucking seen it before, and it truly makes her look so fucking bad and is the primary reason that most of the other shit that Melanie Martinez fans bring up to debunk the allegations doesn't fucking matter, because she literally said that it happened in this statement. I can't get too derailed. Okay, let's read it. This is what Melanie said. I am horrified and saddened by the statements and story told tonight by Timothy Heller. What she and I shared was a close friendship for a period of time. We came into each other's lives as we were both starting our careers as artists, and we tried to help each other. We both had pain in dealing with our individual demons and on the new paths we were forging. But I truly felt we were trying to lift each other up. She never said no to what we chose to do together. Alarm bells. And although we parted ways, I am sending her love and light always. She never said no. She never said no. That's what you're going with. Honest to God, that's what you're going with. And sometimes when you tell Melanie Martinez fans that her response to this was to say she never said no, they try to act like omitting the latter part of that sentence changes the meaning. It fucking doesn't. It's still just as bad. I'll say the whole thing. She never said no to what we chose to do together. That still sounds really rapey, dude. This is where the timeline becomes important. And it only becomes important because of Melanie Martinez fans. Timothy Heller gives a date for the sexual assault. It's an incorrect date, which literally doesn't matter because Melanie already confirmed that the incident happened in her statement. She never said no to what we chose to do together. Okay, so you did something together. You just don't consider it rape. Except once the fans were like, the timelines don't match up, the dates were wrong, Melanie released a follow-up statement in which she just fucking flipped it back and reversed it and went back on what she said the first time. She literally she's so full of shit, it's insane. So this is what she said in her second statement. I understand how hard it could be to see my side of the story, considering no one with a heart would want to invalidate anyone speaking about this topic. I want to thank my fans who took the time to research the timeline, analyze past Instagram photos, and question the story being told, which reveal her false statements. I trusted so many people in my life who took advantage of that trust for their own personal gain. Please know that my intentions with everything that I do in my life are always pure, and I would never be intimate with someone without their absolute consent. Okay, firstly, people whose intentions are pure usually don't have to say that, but yeah, we'll just have that conversation another day. You guys caught that though, right? Round 1, she was like, oh, it happened, but she never said no. Round 2, suddenly it never happened. What the fuck's going on there? She never said no is like the sketchiest way you could possibly issue an initial response to sexual assault allegations. And again, contrary to popular belief, she never said no to what we chose to do together is not any better of a sentence. Actually, you know what that looks like to me? A fancy way of saying she never said no to what I harassed her into, which, funnily enough, lines up perfectly with Timothy Heller's account, which never actually changed. That's one of the many things that Melanie Martinez fans will try to say, is that Timothy Heller changed her story, but that's just not true. And we'll get into that a little bit more later. Okay, I've compiled a list of the primary points that Melanie Martinez fans have brought up to me repeatedly, because they really only have the same, couple things that they say over and over again, and I have a response to absolutely all of it, so let's just go down the list. Thing number 1, The date. We just talked about this. Melanie objectively confirmed in her own statement that an interaction between the two of them happened. Also, Timothy addressed this. There's an interview where she says, the only reason I told Newsweek that it was on the 25th is because I remember posting the picture with the half black, half purple wig the day after. But it was 2 years ago and I could be wrong. Maybe I posted it a couple days later. That's what I remember. It's definitely around that time. I think it was definitely that week. I don't know. I don't even want to talk about the date anymore. That's the only thing people are using as proof that I'm lying, which she's right about to this day. That is the thing people bring up most often as the proof that she's lying, despite the fact that that's just not what it is. Look at the statements. Look at Melanie's statement. Something happened. It doesn't matter what day it happened on because it happened, okay? It happened. Let's just get that out of the way. Okay, here's group 2. The photo, the game, and the weed. The photo. The photo, if anything, proves Timothy's side insofar as her account that the game was present. And also, people say, like, oh, Melanie has the blindfold on. She's in the submissive position. How could she sexually assault Timothy? And to that I say, do you guys know how games work? Like, have you ever played a game before? Because, like, I've played games before, and typically how they work is that you, like, take turns. That's the whole concept of games. I also found this fun little claim in a Twitter thread from a Melanie Martinez stan, where this person tries to say that a contradiction in her claims is whose idea it was to play the game. And you can look at this statement and see, I'll show, in the interview with Newsweek, she claimed Melanie suggested they play the game, but in the interview with a fan of Melanie's, she claimed it was her own idea to buy it as a joke. The answer is literally right there. Timothy's idea to buy it, Melanie's idea to play it. That's not a fucking contradiction. It's disingenuous. The answer is right there in the statement. And also, you could absolutely buy something like that without the actual intention to go home and play it with the friend you bought it with. You know, you could be like wanting the fuzzy handcuffs for aesthetic purposes or something. I get that. Also, Timothy participating in the game does not mean Timothy consented to having sex with Melanie. Also, people will try to say sometimes Timothy says they smoked weed and sometimes she says they didn't. That one's also pretty easy. 2 nights sleepover. One night they smoked, one night they didn't. Literally all of that is in Timothy's statement. So that's not a contradiction either. And additionally, for some people, weed can act as an aphrodisiac, which I think is worth noting here. Okay, this part is one of the most frustrating ones for me. This is the other people Timothy has accused. And to that I say, show me one singular receipt. One. Show me, I'd love it if you could give me more than one, but so far I have not seen a single shred of evidence for this. It is Melanie stans poisoning the well with misinformation, which they have been well documented to do, and this is behavior that Melanie has encouraged, like when she thanked fans for digging through Instagram timelines. This Instagram story of Timothy Heller supposedly admitting the allegations were false, it's literally just completely fake. It was edited by Melanie Martinez stans, and people spread it as proof that the allegations were false to this day, when it's literally just not real. They just lie about shit. They just lie. And I've heard so many names of people that Timothy has supposedly also accused. People say she accused Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift and Rihanna, and it really seems like people are just throwing shit out there. They're just saying stuff. I cannot find proof of literally a single one of these claims. The only one of these people she has ever, like, really talked about is Billie Eilish, and this whole thing where she was, like, talking about her being over-sexualized as a teenager, which you can have whatever opinion you want on that topic, but it is objectively not a sexual assault allegation, and they talk about it like it fucking is. And the rest of this, I can't find anything. I can't find anything. And no, I've asked for receipts on this, on the people who say it. I've asked them. No one can ever show me anything. I think it's just people repeating things that they heard someone else say, and then someone at the beginning of the chain just made it up, because that is what Melanie Martinez stans do. That is their whole fucking MO. That's what they do. You know what's interesting is that there might actually be a pattern here, and it isn't Timothy's pattern, because Melanie has actually been accused by similar behavior by another one of her friends, and a lot of people in her circle dropped her after this. So that's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, Next, they try to say that Timothy was lying to promote her music. They say that she released a song either like right before or right after she made the allegations, depending on who's talking. And it doesn't matter because either way, that's just not true. The single Sleep that they're talking about came out months before she posted the allegations. And people don't really lie about stuff like this for clout, because it's the accuser's life who's going to get ruined. That has been well documented over and over again, as it was documented again with Timothy Heller. She got ran off the internet. So like, what clout? Show me the clout. Show it to me, please. Every time she speaks about it, or has spoken about it, because she obviously can't really anymore because she's not online, Melanie fans accuse her of doing it for self-promotion, as if seeing your abuser in the news cycle who's like touring a huge album and succeeding the world away might not like trigger something in you and make you want to say something about it, especially when so many people still don't fucking believe you. Expecting her not to talk about it is really, really weird. You know who did release music profiting off of the situation though? Melanie, with her disturbing ass little diss track. So maybe deal with that plank before you go around picking sleep slivers, because that was a very weird fucking move. That, in combination with the she never said no thing, that should be enough for y'all to drop her, but it's not, so let's keep going, I guess. Next, they like to bring up Timothy's alleged other behavior of various types. And I really have one blanket statement for all of this, which is that none of it matters. And I don't even feel the need to go into specifics because, unlike, I'm so sorry, I've been rubbing my eyes so much, I don't know what's wrong with it. I don't need my victims to be perfect angels. And people who have said racist shit can still get sexually assaulted. People with weird kinks can still get sexually assaulted. Mentally ill people can still get sexually assaulted. None of that has any bearing whatsoever on her statement, which, contrary to popular belief, she did not change. She never changed her statement. When they say that, it's a lie. Her statement never changed. The informational inconsistencies that exist purely because of Melanie Martinez fans poisoning the well with misinformation. They take pieces out of context, infer a meaning that was never there, and then insist that that makes everything that Timothy said a lie. It's extremely disturbing behavior. You can use information about her past activities to accuse her of being a morally bad person in other areas of her life if you want to, I guess, the stuff that you can actually back up, that is, because a lot of it you can't. But at the end of the day, absolutely none of it has anything to do with her allegations against Melanie Martinez, and it certainly does not disprove a single goddamn piece of it. Stop acting like it does. Stop needing a perfect victim. You're being harmful and gross. Now, I'm gonna slightly address my experience with the Melanie Martinez fan base, particularly on TikTok, because that's where I've gone to war with them the most. These people are infamously horrific online. Ask anybody who's ever had to deal with them. They are deranged. I can personally speak to this, as I've been battling them on TikTok for months at this point. They bring up the same handful of pieces of debunked information over and over again and insist that Melanie is innocent and refuse to listen to any logic or reevaluate any of their beliefs. They're just so set in their ways that you can't tell them anything. While also, I might add, misgendering me a solid 80% of the time, and that's on the fucking low end. I am a they, them. I wouldn't necessarily expect you to know this here, but on TikTok, my pronouns are in my display name. You don't even need to go to my profile to see them. They're literally right there. So me giving any of these people the benefit of the doubt at all when they misgender me just once initially is pretty generous, if I do say so myself. But what happens is I say, hey, stop misgendering me, and then they just keep doing it to what I assume to be a malicious purpose. Like, what else could I possibly infer from that? Which is weird, because these people will have like multiple sets of pronouns in their bios and be like ostensibly woke or whatever, and I'll talk a lot of shit about Melanie Martinez. Obviously I have been. Pretty sure she's not a transphobe. Pretty sure she would be very disappointed in your guys' behavior, and it's like their go-to move. Like, it's so weird. I don't know why Melanie Martinez fans are so transphobic, but it has happened over and over again, and they won't stop. They won't stop, and they're also just delusional and disrespectful, generally speaking, and they have no interest in reason. Their only goal is bouncing away on the pole of someone who will never know that they exist. This is the part where I address the final boss of Melanie Martinez fans. The fucking crow formerly known as Piper Sweeney. This person is my arch nemesis, and they are going to hell. That's dramatic. That was a joke. I'm joking, allegedly. But their video supposedly debunking the allegations against Melanie is deranged, disgusting, and delusional. It's a fucking hit piece that has a total void of actual information at the center, and it has created, if not at least perpetuated, incredibly disturbing victim-blaming rhetoric that Melanie Martinez fans still spread as proof that their fave was innocent. And this video is built on a number of types of sand, and I'm gonna talk you through the types of sand that this video was built on. Sand type number 1, nitpicking. If someone were to approach your life and behaviors on social media presence with malicious intent and pick apart every tiny piece of every tiny thing you've ever done, how good do you think you would come out looking? Because I guarantee it's not as good as you think you would. And spiraling into semantics over her wording and grammar and picking her allegation statement apart like a fucking English professor is totally insane behavior. Like, that's actually a crazy thing to do. And then to do that and act like you proved that she was lying by correcting her grammar? What are you talking about? Sand type 2, body language analysis. This entire field of science is bogus. Especially when, and I truly cannot stress this enough, you do not fucking know the person. You don't know her. You don't know her. You don't know her. Crow, if you're here, I'm speaking directly to your tiny shriveled soul. You do not know her. You don't know her. You don't know her behaviors and what they indicate. You have no basis for that, and neither do any of the people that you're citing. This shit is like one grade above claiming you're a psychic as far as basis in reality. So that entire package can just be tossed overboard because it is bunk science and it's a sister sand to the nitpicking. So if you are using body language analysis as evidence of anything, I am going to have a really hard time taking you seriously about anything else. Sand type number 3. This is the grossest one. Well, I was sexually assaulted and I would never do that, so I don't recommend watching the video. But if you watch it, I guarantee you will find that a solid 85–90% of it is Crow, the video creator, taking every single one of Timothy's behaviors and statements surrounding this and saying, well, I was sexually assaulted and I would never do that, so she must be lying. Like, it's fucked up how often they go down that exact line of reasoning in the video and then act like that's proof of anything. You have to realize how crazy this sounds. As if any singular person can be the arbiter of how victims are allowed to respond and behave regarding their trauma. Remove your head from the crevasse of your anus and join the rest of us in the real world, where once again, you do not know her, and you do not get to dictate how she responds to trauma or say with any certainty whatsoever what any of her behaviors mean. This is where the video gets less fun, and I'm going to be reading pretty heavily off a script for the rest of this, so I'm just going to issue an additional trigger warning for sexual assault, because this is going to be, you know, stuff you haven't heard before. I'm going to be talking about my personal experience, because Melanie Martinez fans seem to like to use their personal experience as ammunition to say that everything they say is true. So I'm going to tell you what happened to me, and I'm going to use it to sort of contextualize what I want to say about the public perception of victims with this video, I guess. I don't know. This is like, I'm sitting here right now, I'm honestly kind of reconsidering talking about this, but I think I'm going to make myself do it. Okay, this brings me to the broader implications of the rhetoric that is spread by Melanie Martinez defenders. This isn't just about Timothy Heller. This is about the victims of sexual assault, and particularly coercive sexual assault, who see the way you pick apart and invalidate her claims and can't help but consider their own stories and what would happen if they ever spoke out. I'll tell you my story. Do you want to hear it? So you can tell me I'm lying and that I never said no, and therefore it wasn't assault. Do you want me to expose my trauma and use it to play arbiter for a day? Are you gonna call me a clout chaser? I had a friend at the time who was very bad for me. She was an extremely toxic person, and the state of our relationship was also very toxic, but at the time we were still really close. I had driven from my town to hers for a night of drunken revelry, and when I arrived at her apartment, I made one request. Please don't make me go to Tanner's house. Tanner was a man in his 30s who started sleeping with my friend when she was a minor, although I think she was 18 or 19 when all this went down, and I was around 21. I hated this man from the very first moment I encountered him years before. I found him to be a pathetic scumbag, and I informed her of this regularly, but unfortunately she just kept him around. He lived in a house with around five other people, and it was basically a nonstop party zone there. I had felt incredibly uncomfortable when we'd been there before, and I didn't want to go back, specifically because of my particular dislike of Tanner. Again, I cannot stress enough that I literally always thought he was a creep. Then, when I was at my friend's house, I got really fucking drunk. I drank very irresponsibly at this point in my life. Does that mean I deserve to get assaulted? I was in my twisted tea era and downing shot after shot of raspberry Smirnoff. A good chunk of the bottle later, one of Tanner's roommates shows up and we end up in his car on the way to Tanner's house. I was drunk enough to agree to put myself in that situation I had specifically asked not to be in that night. We got to Tanner's house and I kept drinking. Then Tanner offered me a dab. I had only smoked weed a handful of other times at that point and never anything dab related, and I informed him of this. He still offered it to me, and I did it. Does that mean I deserve to get assaulted? The dab reduced me to a state bordering on catatonic. I can still place myself there, slumped over in that chair in the living room, feeling like my entire body was filled with cement. My friend noticed my state and offered to go take me to lie down. This was something she'd done for me at other house parties because I regularly got catatonically fucked up whenever I went to party with her. Guess whose bed she chose to take me to? I remember questioning it at the time. I know I did. And I know she told me that we could just go lay down in there and he would sleep on the couch. So I went and I got into his bed. At one point I thought I had to throw up, so I went to the bathroom, and once I was there I was struck with dual urges to vomit and be horizontal, so I laid down in the bathtub and I fell asleep there. I think in retrospect, deep down I knew I needed to be anywhere but that bed. Eventually my friend came to get me and brought me back though, and my nightmare began. I have a confession. I don't know what his face looks like. I can't picture it in my memory. I can list off features that I know were present. Short, he had a mustache, a gap between his front teeth, eyes that were presumably some color, but the reality is I could see him on the street tomorrow and I would have no idea. What I do remember, very vividly, is his silhouette in the doorway. And then he got into the bed. I did not consent to what happened to me after that. I also don't think that I, at any point, verbally said no. I froze while he touched me. Are you going to tell me I let it happen? Do you know the way any reason or control retreated somewhere unreachable in my brain at that moment? I'm going to say something very personal about myself, and I'm doing this in the interest of exhibiting the complexity of sexual assault and the way victims experience and respond to it. I am hypersexual. I've stopped viewing that as a flaw and started viewing it as a neutral part of who I am, because this experience truly goes back as far as I can remember in ways I've never told anyone and probably never will, but I've found that accepting it and coping with it has brought me far more peace than denying it ever did. And this is an aspect of who I am that affected my experience with sexual assault. My mother is a counselor, and I had a conversation with her recently about sexual assault, and she brought up the fact that when men are sexually assaulted, it can trigger an involuntary bodily reaction, and I felt the weight of self-hatred lift just slightly from me, because that had never occurred to me as a precedent for what happened to me. I spent years questioning myself and wondering if I was lying to everyone, because I didn't really just freeze. The fear did more than that. It made me respond. Did I deserve it? Did I say yes? Did I want him to touch me? No. But he did. And that part of my brain kicked into gear and took over. And because that happened, I thought privately to myself, never daring to speak it to anyone for years, that I deserved it. That I wanted it. That I had to have wanted it, because why the fuck else would I do that? I didn't want it. I didn't consent to it. I was taken advantage of. I have unfortunately learned that it's very easy for people to take advantage of my sexuality. I have to be a lot more careful now. Guess what? I was sexually assaulted. Are you going to analyze my body language? Are you going to pick apart my grammar? Are you going to tell me I'm lying? Probably not, because I'm just some random person, and the person I'm accusing of assaulting me is some stupid asshole named Tanner who is probably going to die so lonely the cops will find his body when the neighbors notice the mail piling up and call them. Because I am not Timothy Heller, and the person I'm accusing is not Melanie Martinez. Ultimately, this is my message to the people who continually insist upon the existence of proof of Melanie's innocence. I want you to consider why you think that. I want you to seriously look at the actual statements and the actual timeline of how things went down. I'm not even telling you to stop listening to Melanie Martinez. This might blow your mind, but I actually seriously believe in the merits of art by lots of people who are various degrees of problematic. You will pry Lana Del Rey and Buffalo 66 from my cold, dead, freezing hands. Okay? You know what I don't do? Deny it. I acknowledge it, and I condemn it, and I move the fuck on with my life, because guess what? Bad people can still make good art. I don't think Melanie Martinez is one of them, because her art's not really that good, but that's kind of a different discussion for another day. We don't need to talk about that here. The world is fucking complicated, and I'm a grown-up, and I can acknowledge that without perpetuating extremely harmful and disturbing victim-blaming rhetoric. And for the love of God, stop acting like you have proof of anything. You don't. I don't either, which is why I'm not saying I do. I'm just looking at this with logic and compassion. Proof is very hard to come by in sexual assault cases. Convictions are very hard to come by in sexual assault cases. Your requirement of proof and incessant nitpicking of the victim does not a disproval make. The only grounds you truly have for not believing Timothy Heller are the fact that you don't want to. Which, if that's your thing, whatever, I guess. But, like, grow a spine and admit it instead of spreading lies that almost certainly, well, definitely ruined at least part of someone's life. Sometimes Melanie fans will try to tell me that it's Melanie's life that was ruined, which is a level of delusion so deep that I can't even comprehend it, because Melanie is on massive tours and Timothy Heller can't even exist online anymore. How was Melanie's life ruined? What clout did Timothy gain from this? How could it ever have been worth it? How dare you confirm her fears of not being believed just because you don't want to let go of a mediocre pop artist? All I know is that when I say I believe victims, I mean that shit. I'm not being two-faced and selective about it. I'm not basing my arguments on pointless garbage and misinformation. I'm just looking at how the situation went down between these three parties and the behavior of the parties involved. Timothy Heller, Melanie Martinez, and the Melanie Martinez fandom. What about the Timothy Heller fandom? You may say, no offense, Timothy, it's not really a thing. She didn't really have fans. She had some supporters, not nearly as many as there should have been, but her platform was not anywhere comparable to Melanie's. It was just not an even playing field, never an even match. I'm just looking at the way these three groups interacted with each other, right? These three entities, and I am incredibly disturbed by it. I am disturbed by it as a logical human being, as a moral human being, and as a human being who has experienced coercive sexual assault. I'm disturbed by this fandom's willingness to spread harmful victim-blaming rhetoric and present it as fact when none of it is based in reality. And then they use it as ammunition to defame Timothy Heller and defend Melanie at all costs. You can choose not to believe Timothy, but the only reason you're choosing that is because you like Melanie Martinez more. All of their arguments are disingenuous, and misinformation is so fucking prevalent in these spaces because they don't actually care about victims. Or at least they don't care about them enough that it supersedes their devotion to a celebrity who will never know they exist. Leave Timothy Heller alone. Stop saying her allegations were proven false. That's not true. Stop saying things you can't back up to any degree. Examine yourself. Examine the actual information, and examine why you need this victim to be absolutely flawless in every area of her life in order to be believed. Melanie Martinez defenders and Johnny Depp defenders are the exact same breed of mindless and disgusting. In my opinion, you don't support women, you don't support victims, you support celebrities above all else, which I think fundamentally puts us on different playing fields here, because I care about victims and their stories. I actually give a fuck about something real. And I care about accurate information. So get your facts straight, stop spreading lies, own up to your shit. I've had enough.